In this video, we will discuss the concept of fermentation. We'll look at fermentation that occurs in humans and also fermentation that occurs in yeast and bacteria. Most of the images from this slideshow or this video are adapted from Cognitive Higher Level Biology, our online textbook. So there are two paths after we've undergone glycolysis for the pyruvate molecule to undergo. If there's no oxygen present, then it will undergo fermentation and produce either ethanol or lactate or lactic acid. If oxygen is present, we'll undergo aerobic cellular respiration, where the link reaction, the Krebs cycle or citric acid cycle, and the electron transport chain will occur. If we follow the fermentation pathway, no more energy is produced. But if we do follow the aerobic respiration pathway, a lot of energy is produced. This image is from our older version of the textbook. So we had originally glucose, and it produced 2-pyruvate, and in that process, 2 ATP were made. If there's no oxygen, we undergo fermentation, and there's two forms. Ethanol and carbon dioxide would be produced for yeasts and plants and bacteria. No more energy is being made. Lactic acid or lactate is produced for animals and animal muscles, humans and other animals. No more ATP is made. So if we undergo fermentation or anaerobic respiration, the only amount of energy that's produced is the 2 ATP from the original glucose molecule. That's not very efficient. So oxygen is needed to undergo aerobic respiration, and if that happens, 34 more ATP can be generated from the glucose molecules when we further oxidize the glucose to become carbon dioxide. And we'll take a look at those steps and those processes in our upcoming videos. You might ask why, if no more ATP is made, would we undergo anaerobic respiration? That seems like a huge waste. Well, when there's no oxygen present, we still need to be able to use the process of anaerobic respiration. The cell always carries out glycolysis. It doesn't need oxygen. However, if all of the NAD has been converted to NADH, glycolysis can't even happen. So you could have all the glucose you wanted, but if you have everything already in the form, all the NAD plus as NADH, you can't make any more ATP and you can't undergo glycolysis. So anaerobic respiration happens so that we can convert the NADH back to NAD plus so glycolysis can happen. So the first one we'll take a look at is ethanol fermentation. So this happens in yeast and bacteria and plants, some plants. So pyruvate is reduced into ethanol and carbon dioxide. This happens in the cytoplasm. So what goes into this reaction is pyruvate and NADH. What comes out is ethanol, carbon dioxide, and NAD+. The main idea of this is for NADH to be converted back to NAD+, so glycolysis can continue. But because carbon dioxide is released during the process, this reaction is not reversible because you can't get the carbon dioxide back. So you end up with ethanol and the carbon dioxide has left. This just shows the reaction. So again, it's showing both glycolysis and ethanol fermentation. So this was our glucose. This is the process of glycolysis. We made 2 ATP and 2 NADH. We ended up with 2 pyruvate. So these 2 pyruvate each will react. So you'll form 2 carbon dioxides, 2 ethanols, and make the 2 NAD plus back so that they can continue glycolysis. Lactic acid fermentation also happens in the cytoplasm. It also has pyruvate and NADH as the inputs, but in this case, the outputs are lactate and NAD+. So the main idea is the same thing. NADH is being converted back to NAD+, so glycolysis can continue. Lactic acid can form pyruvate again once oxygen is available. So that reaction is reversible because we haven't lost anything to the system or out of the system. You might want to take a look at the SciShow video on lactic acid fermentation, because new science is showing that it's not necessarily the lactate that's causing the burn, but the extra hydrogen ions that are being produced that's causing the burn with heavy exercise. If so, in the theory of lactic acid fermentation and the burn, if too much lactic acid builds up, your muscles give out. But the SciShow video has a different look at that. But we can also, we'll try this in class, the clothespin challenge, where you will keep stressing your muscles of your finger by pinching a clothespin until your muscle gives out because of lactic acid fermentation. So again, this is the same thing. In this case, you end up with glucose, the 2-pyruvate are made, and then we have the restoration of NAD plus and 2-lactate being produced. And see these 2 hydrogen ions, they're what we now think is causing the burn because it's making your muscles more acidic. After you've exercised and you've produced all this lactic acid or lactate, it needs to get converted back to pyruvate to undergo aerobic respiration. We need oxygen for this process, so our body will start to pant to try to get the oxygen back to your muscles and pay back that oxygen debt, so to speak.